Welcome back to the Criminal Connection podcast, and today we are doing the Podfather's top 10 gangster movies. Everybody that's been on the podcast talks about their favourite gangster films, but I am giving you my top 10. I hate it when people come up to me and go, what's your favourite gangster film? There isn't one. There can only be 10. And the problem is, there could actually be 20, right? So I'm just going to run through my top 10. So obviously, my top 10 might not be your top 10, but I want to know. So make sure you leave us a comment down below. Make sure you let us know whether you think I've got it in the right order, the wrong order, or what I've missed off. Now, coming in at number 10, we've got The Godfather Part 3. Now, a lot of people will say it was the worst one. I think it just wasn't as good as the second one or the first one. All right, but what I loved about it was obviously Al Pacino, he's a fucking legend, Diane Keaton, my good pal George Hamilton, and also you had Adrian from Rocky. So that really did make it for me. But there's a fucking great quote which the Sopranos stole from this movie. Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in. That was actually quoted by Al Pacino in The Godfather 3. So that is why I like Godfather 3 at number 10. But I really think if it hadn't have had that quote in it, The Godfather Part 2 would have been number 10, I think. In at number 9, we have a British film, British gangster film. It's not Rise of the Foot Soldier. Sexy Beast. Now, the reason why I like Sexy Beast is because you've got Sir Ben Kingsley, and he's very serious. He's a real lovey, a real theatrical actor. So to have him appear in a British gangster film calling people cunts. How Ray Winston kept a straight face in that movie, I do not know. But there's a great fucking scene where he's basically asking Ray Winston to do something, and he's literally like, Gal, you're going to do it. No, I'm not. Yes, you are, Gal. Gal, you're a cunt, Gal. And it just went on and on and on for about 4 or 5 minutes. It's the funniest thing ever. And there's one of the funniest lines in the film is when Don Logan, aka Sir Ben Kingsley, says to Ray Winston, I won't let you be happy. Why should I? And I don't know why, but he's just such a cunt. Even though he keeps calling people cunts in the film, he's such a cunt. And he's just a horrible, horrible man. And you actually do want to see him get ironed out. But that's why Sexy Beast was my number 9 movie. Mainly because Sir Ben Kingsley calls Ray Winston a cunt throughout. That's the only reason. I've told you my favourite dialogue from the movie. I've told you why I love Sexy Beast. So if you've got some things that you think I've missed or you want to put in your favourite comments, make sure you put them in the comments below. So moving on to number 8. It's Guy Ritchie's movie debut, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. Now, this film was a phenomenon when it was released. I think it's the only low budget British film that I think it was made for just over $1 million. It done £18 million at the box office in the UK, which is phenomenal. But I think there's so many quotable scenes, so much funny dialogue. But for me, my good friend Vass Blackwood, there was a great scene in that. He's talking to Nick the Greek, and he talks about drinking the milk and not being a pussy. And there's so many. I mean, when he actually is in the pub drinking the thing, and then he spits the drink all over the geezer and sets fire to him. I mean, that isn't funny, but I did laugh at that. But yeah, that Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. I think I watched it. I think I went to the cinema 3 times to watch it. And there's obviously made Jason Statham a massive star. There's just so many, like when they're in the weed house, and then people are getting shot, and Frank Harper turns around and goes, well, everybody stop getting shot. That's another one, right? So they're my favourite quotes from the movie. Let us know what you think, if you disagree or if you do agree. And if there's some other comments you want to put, make sure you hit them up down below. So moving on to number 7, another Guy Ritchie and Matthew Vaughn film, Snatch. Now, the reason I like Snatch was because it starred Brad Pitt in it. And for anybody that saw Lock, Stock, you would have expected Guy Ritchie to do another gangster film, but would he have done another gangster film about a travelling community with Brad Pitt playing a traveller? Nobody would have called that, right? So that was a genius bit. on Guy Ritchie's part. And Snatch, for me, there's a famous traveller family called the Frankhams that I know very well, and they actually worked with Brad to make sure he got the accent right, and he basically could become a prize-fighting travelling man. That scene when he says, "Do you like dogs?" That, for me, is the quote. And there were so many funny things. I mean, there was the thing when they do the robbery, and there's the diamond, and there's the dog, and I mean, you know, there's Vinnie Jones in it, Stephen Graham's in it. I mean, Statham's in it. I mean, there's just it's such a great movie. If you put a gun to my head, you know, which one was the best, it's really hard. But I think the reason Snatch just nicks it is purely because of Brad Pitt. You've heard my favourite Snatch quote, so make sure you put yours down in the comments below. So coming in at number 6 is one of my favourite directors, Martin Scorsese. Some people watch The Irishman and I thought it was a little bit weird because obviously they used this AI to make people look younger. I think it's difficult when you've got 3 acting legends like De Niro, Pacino and Pesci saying to them, you know, guys, you're a little bit old for this, let somebody else kick the out of somebody. I think that was the only thing that let it down. When you actually watch the violent scenes, it does look like, you know, they're struggling. So in The Irishman, De Niro plays a character called Frank Sheehan, and he has this great line, and he says, 3 people can only keep a secret when 2 of them are dead. And I don't know what it is about that quote. There's probably 50 quotes in that movie, which you would actually go, that's a good quote, this is a good quote, but that was my favourite quote. So make sure you put your comments down below, share your favourite quotes, and let us know your favourite scenes. So at number 5, I put in Godfather because I think Francis Ford Coppola, he made this movie. And, you know, there's a great movie, or great TV series, should I say, on the Paramount Network called The Offer. And it basically goes into Mario Puzo's story, who wrote the book about The Godfather. It talks about how the film was made. It talks about how Coppola cast the movie. It's a great show. If you haven't watched that and you actually watch this movie, you know, the studio didn't want Marlon Brando. Studio didn't want Al Pacino. Pretty much everybody that Francis Ford Coppola brought in, they said no to. But that just showed you Francis Ford Coppola's genius, right? Because he stood by it. He got his guy. I mean, the greatest quote for me in The Godfather, "I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse." That, to me, is The Godfather. And I think it's when the guy says, "Oh, what are you going to do?" He says, "Is either going to be his signature on the contract or his brain." So that is, to me, the genius of Marlon Brando and the genius of The Godfather. Please put your comments below. Let us know if you agree. Give us your favourite Godfather quotes. So coming in hot, number 4, is another Scorsese film. I mean, Scorsese's the governor when it comes to these movies, right? But Casino. I've got to say, that film really did capture the mob and all the shit that went on in Vegas. And my favourite, it's not a quote, it's an actual scene. Sharon Stone played this character called Ginger, who was a good time girl in Vegas. Obviously, Sam Rothstein falls in love with her. She's basically a crackhead. She's out drinking, she's smoking, she's taking drugs. They have a baby, but then she starts fucking around with Joe Pesci. And there's a scene in the movie where Sam Rothstein gets a phone call saying, "Your wife's in the casino in a restaurant with Joe Pesci." So he's like, "Well, where's my child?" So what's she done? She tied the child to the bed, right? Got out of a nut and gone out to dinner. And you see De Niro walk over to the table, and you can see he's so angry. And he sits at the table, he's looking at her, and he just looks at her. And I'm sure anybody that's ever been out with a crazy woman or a crazy guy that parties, takes drugs, will have experienced some level of this. And he sits at the table and he looks at her and he's like, he's like, "What you've done with my child, you child, you've done what to," you know, you can see that he's that close to actually fucking strangling her over the table because Nicky's there. He knows Nicky's gonna iron him out. He knows Nicky's killed loads of people. So, and at that point, you knew either he was going to go or Nicky was going to go. And as it happens, because Nicky had been robbing all the fucking bookies and he'd be behaving badly. And obviously, you know, the mob aren't they don't like publicity, right? So when you've got somebody running around Vegas bringing heat on them, that's why he had to go. And that scene where him and his brother were beaten senseless and buried alive apparently happened in real life, and that was based on a true story when Anthony Spilotro was murdered by the mob. So that is why that film, for me, there was so much truth in that film. So although Scorsese didn't use the real names, we know a lot of these people that were in the film, and as I said, if you do your research and you actually look some of these people up, you'll be fascinated by the stories. Hot in at number 3 is one of my favourite movies of all time, Carlito's Way. And I love the relationship between Al Pacino and Sean Penn. Sean Penn obviously played this sort of coked up lawyer who wants to be a gangster. And it was so good. I mean, one of my favourite scenes is when he's talking to Kleinfeld and he turns around and he says, "If I ever see you again, you'll be dead." Just like that. And I thought that was one of the greatest lines, you know, in the film. And I also loved, there's that great scene when he's in the toilet, when he goes, "Okay, I'm reloaded." That for me was like one of the scenes. And I just loved that fucking film. I'm actually going to watch that film again because I haven't seen it for so long. Make sure you put your views in the comments down below because we really want you to fucking be part of this, you know what I mean? Because this is the Podfather's opinion. So it's good to get the community's opinion as well. So in at number 2 is Martin Scorsese again with Goodfellas, which was without a doubt, it could easily have been the number 1 film, yeah? So many great actors that went on to great things. You know, I think most of the Sopranos TV series was cast from Goodfellas. My favourite scene in that film is the beginning of the movie. Ray Liotta's going through all these different things and you see him growing up and he says, "As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster." For me, that film, you know, as I said, it could have easily been number 1, but it was number 2. I felt sorry for Ray Liotta, God bless him. He was so good, but De Niro and Pesci, it was just like a masterclass where they were just banging heads. They stole the film, and I think everybody in that film absolutely pulled it out of the bag. One of the great scenes is when I think they've just done a heist and they're in this sort of bar. Somebody says something, I think Ray Liotta says to Joe Pesci, "You know, you're a funny guy." And Pesci turns around and goes, "What the f*** is so funny about me? Am I Am I here to fucking amuse you?" And then obviously it goes on and goes on and goes on. He ends up pulling the gun out, and it's all a prank. But you know, it's that moment where they're all looking at each other, and it's all like, no, like, you know, it's just saying you're funny, and it's sort of like, no, I'm gonna fucking kill this guy. You know what I mean? So it was that level of intensity. I thought Goodfellas is definitely my number 2. It could have been the number 1, but I'm going to tell you about number 1 in a minute. But make sure you put your favourite Goodfella quotes below, and feel free to comment and share your thoughts with us on that. So in at the number 1 spot is a film called Scarface. Now, if you haven't seen Scarface, you have to see this film. It was probably the movie that made Al Pacino. It was just such a great movie. You know, one of the funny scenes early on is they're in Miami and they go to buy some drugs from some Colombians. And then Tony Montana says, "I don't like Colombians, man." And then the other guy looks at him and goes, "Oh, it'll be fine, because I don't trust these guys, these cockroaches," right? So then he doesn't bring the money into the room, right? So he walks in and there's a bird sat on the bed and there's a guy standing there and he goes, "Oh, you got the money?" And he goes, "It's close by." "You got the stuff?" "It's close by." So they're having this like standoff, and then all of a sudden they pull the guns out, and then they basically kill one of his friends. They put him up in a shower, hang him up like that, and then they literally bring a fucking chainsaw out. I mean, probably one of the most brutal, one of the most violent gangster films about selling cocaine ever. One of my favourite quotes is, "First you get the sugar, then you get the power, then you get the woman, then you get..." You know, and for him, it was just about getting drugs, getting money, getting girls. You know, that was his living the American dream. I think one of the funniest things was towards the end of the film where he got so fucked up and he was sat on this throne in this mansion in Miami. All of a sudden, you know, these guys are obviously going to kill him. And he just happens to have a fucking rocket launcher, and a machine gun. These guys come in, and then he's literally like, okay, you want to play rough? Okay, say hello to my little friend. And then he pulls his fucking machine gun and this rocket launcher out, runs out and just starts blowing people up, machine gunning them. And he must get shot 50 times, but he's still going, the geezer, you know. So Al Pacino, what a legend. Thank you for tuning in and listening to my top 10 of my favourite movie moments. There are a couple of other films that we need to give honourable mentions to, and that is Rise of the Foot Soldier, obviously. It's the only British true crime film franchise. Obviously, I played the iconic Tony Tucker character. I could have easily made that number one, but I didn't want to be biased, and I didn't want to, put that in front of those types of movies. Another honourable mention, obviously, Nick Love. He directed The Football Factory and The Business. You could arguably say that Football Factory and The Business were Danny Dyer's greatest work, other than obviously him playing Mick in EastEnders. So those were the other three films that needed to have an honourable mention. You could also mention, obviously, The Long Good Friday and Get Carter, but that's my top 10, the Podfather's top 10. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe. If you've got a top 10 you'd like me to cover or you'd like to see on the show, make sure you let us know. You can drop a comment below. We look forward to seeing you on the other side.